Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Bhante. Morning, Bhante. Morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. Good morning.
Oops.
You make the announcement first.
Right.
My PK is too big and blurry.
What have I done here? Shoot. Hold on, Bhante.
Huh?
I don't know what I did. Hold on. Okay, let's do this. This one. Okay. And this one. Where'd it go?
You want it? Okay.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. Just a brief announcement before we begin the session. You should be able to see on your screen the schedule going forward from June 1st. What we'll be doing is for the 10 a.m. session with Bhante G, we'll be alternating every day from Monday through Saturday, Dhamma talk to Q&A sessions. So Monday Dhamma talk, Tuesday Q&A, Wednesday Dhamma talk, Thursday Q&A, Friday Dhamma talk, Saturday Q&A, and then Sunday we will not be having a session after this Sunday. This is the last Sunday session. And then the 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time session will be sort of in a flip-flop schedule where, as you can see on the screen, when Bhante G is doing a Dhamma talk, Bhante Sada G will be doing a Q&A and vice versa. And then at the bottom of the screen, you can see here that we'd like you to send your questions to askbhante@bhavanasociety.org. And we'd like you to address the question, the intended recipient, whether that's Bhante Sada G or Bhante G. Please make sure that the questions are very clear to the recipient. And now that we are switching to this format, we'd like you to try to avoid asking questions in the chat box during the session so that you can pay full attention to the Dhamma talk. If you do need a reference of a sutta reference of the sutta number and the sutta location, that would be okay, and we could get you that quick answer to that question. So thanks, and I suppose if you have any questions about this, also you can send an email to askbhante@bhavanasociety.org, and we will answer that question. Thanks very much, and we're happy that you're with us today.
Okay. Let us begin our meditation first with Metta recital. May all beings be happy and secure. May all beings have happy minds. Whatever living beings there may be, without exception, weak or strong, long, large, medium, short, subtle or gross, visible or invisible, living near or far, born or coming to birth, may all beings have happy minds. Let no one deceive another, nor despise anyone anywhere. Neither from anger nor ill will should anyone wish harm to another, as a mother would risk her own life to protect her only child. Even so, towards all living beings, one should cultivate a boundless heart. One should cultivate for all the world a heart of boundless loving friendliness, above, below, and all around, unobstructed, without hate or resentment.
whether standing, walking, sitting, lying down, or whenever awake, one should develop this mindfulness. This is called divinely dwelling here, not falling into erroneous views, but virtuous and endowed with vision, removing desires for sensual pleasures. One comes never again to birth in the womb.
With this very marvelous, very practical, wholesome metta meditation, let us begin our insight meditation together with the tranquility as it ends in pay mindful attention to your breathing. As you breathe in, you notice the breath touching the rims of your nostrils and then expanding your lungs area and lower abdominal area. As you breathe out, notice the lower abdomen contracting, chest area contracting, and the breath leaving the nostrils. As you breathe in and out this way, you notice there is a very brief pause between inhaling and exhaling. Let it happen as it is. Don't try to make a wider gap between inhaling and exhaling. Let it be very natural. Here, friends, remember we are trying to see things exactly as they are, not trying to see anything artificial or deliberately made anything. Breath control, manipulating breath, verbalizing, conceptualizing, all will be obstacles to our seeing things as they really are. And therefore, we just pay attention to what we really experience, what really things are happening, and then you notice the feeling of breath, perception of breath, your attention or volition to pay attention, to, to keep awake, you have consciousness. All this happen as we breathe in and out, and they all change as the breath changes. Therefore, when we breathe in, our feeling, perception, thought, and consciousness move along with the breathing. That means they change just as the breath changes. As we breathe out, they change just as the breath changes, and there is no gap, there is no moment that any of these things is there. This is the very nature of Sankhara, seeing these three characteristics: rising moment, altering moment, and passing away moment are the characteristic of Sankhara. Buddha call it Uppado Panyayati, Vayo Panyayati, Thitasa Anyatattang Panyayati. Arising is discernible, passing away discernible. What is in the present altering is discernible. Anyatattang, it keeps changing from one moment to next. And this happens all the time in everything in our life. This is a very short, brief sample of our life. And then when we see this reality, the truth, the body becomes calm and relaxed, the breath becomes calm and relaxed, In fact, when the breath becomes calm and relaxed, the body becomes calm and relaxed, and then the mind also becomes calm and relaxed. Noticing this, we breathe in and out. Then we also notice the mind does not try to hold on to anything because mind already sees things are moving, changing, appearing and disappearing without giving any moment for the mind to hold on to anything. At the same time, by the way, mind also is changing. Knowing this, we allow this to happen. And then when it happens, our resentment or anger or disappointment whenever anything happens that we don't like also will disappear because there is nothing to hold on to anything. As this happens, our loving friendliness or metta feeling arises. When these two happen, we also notice that the whole purpose of this practice is to share our goodwill, friendship with all suffering beings. And therefore, suffering beings are in our perception. Therefore, compassion arises. When compassion arises, when then joy arises, and restlessness and worry fades away, happiness arises, sleepiness and drowsiness fade away, concentration arises as we see things as they really are, then doubt disappears. This is a very not somebody deliberately using language made any logical sequence, but this is the natural sequence. And noticing this, we breathe in and breathe out, and when we gain full concentration, we can use that to reflect back on whatever is happening. Everything without any exception, even the subtlest things change. And the subtlest changes can be noticed only when we gain concentration. Aiming at this, let us continue our practice. dukkhapattaca niddukkha bhayapattaca nibbhaya sokapattaca nissoka hontu sabbe pipanino. May the suffering be free from suffering. May the fear struck be free from fear. May the grieving be free from grief. So too may all beings be. Friends, this is our very earnest wish. We want to cultivate through this practice of metta meditation today and all day and all our life. Now today I want to continue our talk on Nama Rupa and Vijnana. I said in our earlier discussion when Venerable Nandaka went to Bhikkhuni monastery and spoke to them on selflessness using similes, and he used three similes. One is an oil lamp, second is a tree shade, third is a cow whose skin is removed. So the first one, he asked these bhikkhunis, we just want to remember, I used the story for people to remember. Even without story, the truth is the same. In order to make it easy to remember, Buddha used stories, and Venerable Nandaka also used this. He asked when oil wicks all extinguish, could there be a flame of the oil lamp? They said no. And then he also asked when a tree has roots and cut the roots, the tree, when the tree is there, when the sun rises, tree's shadow you can see. When the tree is not there, the sunrise, can the shadow be there? They said no. And then he asked when there is a cow who that a butcher killed and removed the skin using a very fine, sharp knife, remove the separate the skin from the flesh. Then, even though even though he put back the skin, is there any connection between the flesh and the skin? So these bhikkhuni said no, because oil lamps, oil wicks, the flame of the oil lamp depends on the oil and the wicks. As they burn, flame is there. Similarly, when the tree stands sunrise and the tree is there, then shadow. So shadow depends on the tree. And similarly, when the skin and the flesh join with the very fine sinews, and if it is removed, the connection is not there. And then they, in order to, so Venerable Nandaka asked them, how did they know this? They said, this, it sounds like a chorus of a song. They said in Pali, it's a very important, very beautiful passage. I deliberately want to recite that passage for people to remember. I don't think you will forget it because it is very poetic and very singing-like. They said, Tajjan tajjam bhante paccayam paticca tajja tajja vedana upajjanti tajjasa tajjasa pasyasa nirodha tajja tajja vedana nirujjanti. You can hear, when you hear the word tajja tajja, I don't think you will forget it. Tajja means, tat means that ja is born, and tajjang paticca, paccayang paticca, tajja tajja vedana upajjanti. That, depending on that, and that feeling, depending on that and that contact, feeling arises. Just like oil lamp flame is there, when the oil and wick is there, depending on them, flame is there. The shadow depends on the tree, because of the tree shadow rises. Similarly, when there is sinews between the skin and the flesh, when they remove, there is no connection. When the sinews are together, there is a connection. So when there is sinews, the feeling arises on the skin. And similarly, they said when there is contact, eye contact, tajja means eye contact, ear contact, nose contact, body contact, tongue contact, body contact, mind contact. When there is a contact of these six senses, feeling arises. That's what they want to say. They ask, when Nandaka asked them, how did they know? They said, Bhante, we already experienced it. We already experienced. Therefore, we know when, and when they say they experience it, they represent all of us, not only them. They spoke from their own personal experience. And then when we listen to this talk, read the Dhamma, and know, remember that feeling arises from context, we refer to ourselves. We refer to ourselves. And then while listening, reading these passages, we look at ourselves. Mentally we see, is this true? Ask ourselves, is it true? If we use ourselves as what you call witness, evidence, an example, we can see this happening. When the feeling, when the contact arises, feeling arises within us, anytime. But the problem is that we don't pay much attention and we just let it pass, let it disappear. That is why we don't see it. So the 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 Buddha continued teaching the dependent origination, and he also explained feelings in many different ways, and all these feelings arise from depending on contact. There is no any other way for feeling to arise. So Buddha explained that there are 18 kinds of feelings. 18 kinds of feelings. What are the 18 kinds of feelings? When one sees with the eye, one experiences a form, or one can see object, that is, one can see object, the form. If the form happens to be pleasing, joy arises. So then, if the object happens to be not appealing, not pleasant, the contact will be unpleasant, then grief arises. Then, if the object happens to be neither pleasant nor unpleasant, equanimity arises. So these are the three kinds of feelings that arise through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. When you multiply this by 3, you can see 18 kinds of feelings. Now, also Buddha mentioned that there are 36 kinds of feelings. There are uh, 6 kinds of joy based on the household life, and 6 kinds of joy based on renunciation. Now, we all know 6 kinds of joy arising in household life. Household life actually doesn't mean somebody, since there is no better word in English, we, it has been translated into English, household life. In Pali, what it says, samisa, niramisa. Actually, the joy arising with greed is called household, joy arising from household life. Actually, it should be joy arising with greed, desire. And the joy arising without greed is called greed of renunciation. What you call desire arising based on joy, arising based on renunciation. So there are 6 kinds of joy arising based on desire, and there are 6 kinds of joy arising without desire. That's how we have to understand it. Then there are 6 kinds of grief based on the base depending on grief. Or household life, they call household life. Or 6 kinds of grief arising depending on the object which is unpleasant, or anger can arise. Grief, that is called, that's translated as grief arising depending on household life, based on household life. Household life actually should be replaced with anger. And then there is 6 kind of grief based on renunciation. Grief arises without anger is called grief arising based on renunciation. So there are 6 kinds of greed. Joy arises based on greed, and 6 kinds of joy arises based on without greed, non-greed. 6 kinds of grief arise based with the anger. 6 kinds of grief arise without anger. That's how we have to understand. Then there are 6 kinds of equanimity based on household life. That means there is a six kind of neither pleasant nor unpleasant, no equanimity arises with confusion. Remember, and the other one is six kind of equanimity arises without confusion. Remember at the beginning we mentioned greed or what you call joy has the greed as underlying tendency, and joy and unpleasant sensation arise with underlying tendency of anger, and neither pleasant nor unpleasant sensation are with the underlying tendency of confusion, ignorance. Now, when this arise through six senses without greed, with hatred, with delusion, it is called household uh, joy. Six kind of household joy. And when this joy arises without greed, hatred, and delusion, they are called joy arising without, joy arising based on renunciation. So the last one is the equanimity arising with confusion through the six senses, equanimity arising without confusion through six senses. Now, Buddha explained these 18 kinds of, 36 kind of joy, grief, and equanimity. Buddha said, what are the six kinds of joy based on the household life? When we explain one or two, you will understand the rest. When one regards as a gain the gain of forms cognizable by the eye that are wished for, desired, agreeable, gratifying, and associated with worldliness, or when one recalls what was formerly obtained that has passed, ceased, and changed, joy arises. Such joy is as this is called joy based on the household life. That is pretty clear. The second, what are the six kind of joy based on renunciation? It is very interesting. Same objects, the when one practice mindfulness can use to arouse different type of joy. What are they? When knowing the impermanence, change, fading away, and cessation of forms, one sees as it actually is, with proper wisdom, that form both formerly and now are all impermanent, suffering, and subject to change, joy arises. This is a very special kind of joy. Not too many people can experience that joy. That joy is when eyes have seen object in the past that can be pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, or so forth, then the mindful meditator sees those objects that he or she has seen in the past, all are impermanent. They are impermanent now, they will be impermanent in future. When one sees this with wisdom, there arises joy. There is another statement in the Dhammapada, yato yato sammasati khandanang udayabhyang labhati piti pamojjang amatantang vijanata. Whenever one sees rising and falling of all the aggregates, with when one sees that all the aggregates are rising and falling, and that awareness, that understanding arouses joy, amatang, what do you call it? Piti pamajya, joy and tranquility arises in the mind. That is very much like experiencing Nibbana. Amatantang vijanatang. Amata is another name for Nibbana. So, when one sees with mindfulness that everything is impermanent, grief doesn't arise, anger doesn't arise, confusion doesn't arise. What arises is joy. Why is that? This is the truth. Seeing the truth, joy arises. Not seeing the truth, grief can arise, greed can arise, confusion can arise. What is the truth? Truth is that everything is impermanent. So we experience that. This is with regard to seeing. And same thing goes with hearing and smelling, tasting, touching and thinking. Joy arises. In when greed is the basis, with that base, if we hear sound, any sound, the joy, and don't look at impermanence. We just get carried away and enjoy it because of desire and ignorance. But this is just the opposite of it. Then, what are the six kinds of grief? Also, household grief with desire, when one sees something, hears something, smells something, tastes something, touches something, or have not seen, the person might think, well, I am so unlucky, unfortunate, I have very bad karma. All I have heard in the past hurt me. All I am hearing now hurts me. So the person, when this state of mind, when one sees, hears, smell, touch and thought, they all bring grief. This is called six kind of grief based on greed, hatred and delusion. In short, household based on household life means greed, hatred and delusion. Not getting something. But the one who trained to be mindful, when that person sees, hears, smells, or had seen in the past, or heard in the past, uh, or smell in the past, and so forth, that person may not have pain or grief because he recalls what was formerly not obtained, that has passed, ceased, and changed. grief arises. Such a grief is called grief based on household life. Once the person has not gained insight, not gaining something will have pain or painful or grief, feeling of grief. Whereas the sixth kind of grief based on renunciation, when by knowing the impermanence, change, fading away, and cessation of forms, one sees as it actually is with proper wisdom, that form, both formerly and now, are all impermanent, suffering, and subject to change. One generates a longing for the supreme liberation and says, when shall I enter upon that state based on that noble ones now enter upon and abide. So the noble ones have attained the state of liberation by seeing impermanence of everything that they have seen, heard, smell and so forth in the past. I also have seen them impermanent and changing, but I have not attained that state of liberation. So the anxiety arises in him, sort of disappointment arises in him, even though I have seen impermanence of everything, I have not attained it. And he will think, when am I going to attain it? That is based not on greed, hatred or delusion. That is based on how to get rid of greed, hatred and delusion. And therefore his grief is, is, uh, is called grief based on renunciation. He has renounced and he has been practicing and seeing impermanence of everything, and yet he has not attained full liberation. And not attaining full liberation for him is a cause of grief. For those who have not developed the mental mindfulness practice, and when they did not get anything, they see that they are very unfortunate, they are sad, they are depressed. But this individual who has practiced mindfulness will have a different kind of grief based on I have seen the truth but still I have not attained liberation. Then there are six kinds of equanimity. This equanimity also based on one, you can see equanimity of household life and equanimity of the life of pronunciation. Knowing the impermanence, change, fading away and cessation of forms, one sees as it actually is with proper wisdom, that form, both formerly and now, are all impermanent, suffering and subject to change. Equanimity arises in him. One with the greed, hatred and delusion, when they have equanimity, that becomes very depressing and disappointing because they don't know the limit, and without knowing the limit they try to achieve things, and therefore when they don't achieve it they get disappointed. But the one who has trained to be mindful, when he sees everything is impermanent, you see the difference is that both one who has renounced and one who has not renounced see the same thing through the hear same sound, smell same smell, taste the same thing, the same taste, touch the same tangible, and maybe thinking of the same thing. The one who trained the mind to be mindful does not see something different. The same five aggregates that person has, all the visual objects, all audible sounds and so forth, just whatever is available in the world, his senses are exposed to them, and his attitude and his mental state is so different from the other person's mental state. And therefore, this person has equanimity. That equanimity is very much a different type of equanimity. That is equanimity, seeing impermanence and so forth of everything. And this equanimity is a very wonderful state of attainment. And even that, Buddha mentioned, has two states. Now, I think I am running out of time. My friend turned the clock towards me, very gently reminding me that it is time for me to stop, and we'll continue this when I give the next talk. Maybe tomorrow you can see the schedule. Tomorrow I will answer questions. Right? Where is that?
I'll see if I can bring it up.
No.
Close this.
This.
All right.
All right.
See if I can.
Okay. Well, since we change this, tomorrow also I give a talk in order to follow the schedule we made.
There it is.
Okay. Tomorrow I continue the talk, and day after tomorrow you can ask me questions. So, friends, we have practiced metta meditation and mindfulness and gained some concentration and listen to little Dhamma talk. Is getting more and more deep and sometimes not very clear, and we try to clarify them when you ask more questions. With this, from all these things, we acquired a great deal of merits, and we want to use this to wish. Marriage is the skill is the that we cultivate to purify and clean the mind, and that is what we try to do with this clean state of mind, with this thought of metta and compassion. We want to wish all those who are suffering from this virus and those who have lost their relatives and friends are still mourning and grieving. We want to wish them to be free from grief, knowing and seeing, understanding the Dhamma. And there are many people who are trying very compassionately to help these people, and doctors, nurses, there are other staff members, and we want to wish them to be free from sickness, remain to be healthy and strong, continue their metta, compassion, patience, understanding, and commitment to help these people. And there are being individuals who are supporting them numerous ways, including financial supports. And there are also leaders who all over the world, in every country, are trying to help them, and may they have wisdom understanding, patience, compassion to meet this situation, this difficult situation, and make right decision to help the world and get back to normal life as quickly as possible. With this wish, we want to end this morning's session, and I want to thank you once again for joining us, encouraging us to continue this, and see you tomorrow morning